everyone, and thank you for being here. When we first started thinking about creating the 30 by 30 initiative, what we imagined was a community of practice where each of you would share what you're doing in your agency, what's working and what's not, so we can be a learning community, learning from each other. So our esteemed panelists today are here to speak specifically about what they've been doing in their own community of practices, whether it be in their agency or in their states, to create a community of practice, this learning community that we had envisioned. So our panelists include Mesa, Arizona Police Department, Detective Grit Catone and Officer Emily Nelson. We have also Los Angeles Women Police Officers and Associates, Commander Ruby Flores, who's president of the LAWPOA. We have the New York Women in Law Enforcement, Colonel retired Deborah Campbell of the NYWLE Board of Directors. And we also have Women Leaders in Law Enforcement, Chief Retired Deanna Cantrell, who is the president of the WLLE Foundation. I'll turn it over to our esteemed panelists now so they can present on their own work and see what lessons you all can take away from that. So let's start off with the Chief Deanna Cantrell. Chief, are you on? Let's move on to Colonel Deborah Campbell.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. Thank you so much, everybody, for this opportunity. And thanks to 30 by 30 for what you're doing. I only learned about this a couple of years ago, and I'm just so impressed with the work that you've done. Excuse me, my presentation actually comes on the heels of Mo McGough, who came to our New York Women in Law Enforcement annual conference in October, presented for us. And I guess she was kind of impressed with what she saw. So she asked me to spend a little time talking to you about how did we form New York Women in Law Enforcement. Excuse me. So we're in our 14th year. We formed in 2009. And I guess I was the point person who kind of pulled everything together and helped to form our board of directors. So what I plan to do, and I'm sorry, I don't have a PowerPoint, but I'm going to take you through some bullets of what we did and the order we did it in. I think it's very important when you're creating change to make sure you include certain steps to ensure the likelihood of success. So first of all, I want to say that I entered the New York State Police back in 1983. And I say that knowing some of you probably were not born at that time, but I'll let that go. And at that time, the New York State Police was formed in 1917, and we had no women in the organization until 1973. I came on in 83, and at that point, we only had about 40 women in the organization, so not a lot in law enforcement. As my career continued, I was fortunate to be promoted and to attend the National Center for Women in Policing. And some of you who have been in law enforcement for a while might have been a part of that. That was formed by Penny Harrington, was the first person in charge. She was the first female chief in Portland. Wonderful, wonderful person. And at that time, it was the late 90s, and I had been promoted, and I was overseeing recruitment efforts for the New York State Police. And I was invited to speak at that conference. When I went to the conference, some key things happened. I started to network with other women in law enforcement. We didn't have that many in the New York State Police, certainly not those of rank. And it gave me the opportunity to reach out and get to know other people and what they were doing in their organizations. I met one of my very best friends in law enforcement at that conference from New Jersey State Police, Gail Cameron, who was a captain at the time. And that became instrumental to really finding out about what Jersey was doing with a women in law enforcement organization and starting ours. In 2004, then Lieutenant Colonel Gail Cameron invited me to speak at their organization, New Jersey Women in Law Enforcement, about our recruiting efforts. I was totally impressed by what they had done to start an organization for women in law enforcement across the state. And I knew that it was something that I wanted to do for the New York State Police or New York women within law enforcement. I will say this, though, one thing I realized is timing is everything, because it is a big initiative to form an organization like this, and I certainly wanted it to be successful. So at that time, I talked to some other people within our agency about it, and we decided it really wasn't the time to start it yet because we didn't have the support that we needed to make it work. Fast forward to 2008. In that year, I was assigned, actually, I was a colonel within the organization, and I was assigned to work as a liaison between the New York State Police and the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services, which is an agency that oversees other law enforcement agencies within the state. I met with the commissioner at the time, a woman, Denise O'Donnell, who was fabulous. And I talked to her about the idea that I had of forming this organization within New York State. She was 100% on board. And it was important to have her on board because as the person overseeing DCJS, I knew that I would have her support in starting this organization. I then met with my boss, Colonel Harry Corbett, who was our, Superintendent Harry Corbett, who was our superintendent at the time and the first superintendent of color for the New York State Police. I explained to him the idea that I had, kind of going off what had been formed in New Jersey. And I also had his support. That was important because it took up quite a bit of my time at first, and it was important to have the support of my boss in doing it. So the first thing I want to say is timing is everything when it comes to creating opportunities. And I had to wait a few years until the timing was right. In order to create this statewide organization, it was important to create a board of directors, because any organization that's successful has a board of directors that runs the organization. I believe that I certainly wanted women in law enforcement, but I also felt it was important to open it up to women in civilian capacities within law enforcement organizations, because as we know, they are very important to our success, and we felt that the organization should include them. So my second thing was, who can help me with this initiative? Because at that point, I did not know a lot of women of rank across the state. And I particularly was looking at first at women of rank who were in a position where they had the authority and autonomy to get involved with this initiative. So I sent letters out to the other organizations across the state, New York State Chiefs of Police, New York State Sheriff's Association, NYPD, the New York State University system, explaining what I was trying to do, what we were trying to do, and asking them for suggestions of names of women within their organizations that they thought would be involved, would want to be involved and be helpful in this. Our founding board, our founding board, and so I spoke to people, and I have to tell you, not one person said they didn't want to be involved. There was a lot of excitement because we had never done anything like this before. And so they were right on board. We had personnel from the New York State Police, the New York City Police Department, Division of Criminal Justice Services, University Police, Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Again, we opened it up to civilians and law enforcement positions. Onondaga County Sheriff's Office, local police departments, so a good composite of agencies and organizations across the state. Again, I think that the selection of the organizational board, if you're forming an organization like this, is key to its success. Ask yourself, do the people I'm selecting have the autonomy and the rank to help make this happen? As I mentioned, at first, we picked mostly commissioned officers, women of higher rank, because we knew they'd have that autonomy. I'm proud to say that now our board consists of also line officers as well, because there's a lot of interest and they really add a lot to the conversation as far as where we'll move forward and what we're doing next. The initial meeting of the founding members of the board of directors for New York Women in Law Enforcement was held in March of 2009. And during that time, we established our law enforcement goals for the organization. which were simply to support the recruitment, retention, and promotion of women in law enforcement, to create a program for continued mentoring of both women in law enforcement and students interested in criminal justice, to sponsor community service projects which promote a positive relationship between law enforcement and the communities we serve, to facilitate the sharing of training opportunities and deliver the training. And I'm proud to say that, as I say, we've had an annual conference every year. So we're in our 14th year right now. To serve as an advocate for the development of leadership skills for women who are part of the organizations to help them rise through the ranks and achieve their goals, and to assist and support its members in maintaining the balance between law enforcement and their personal lives. I think that work-life balance is a really important thing, especially for women who oftentimes are the primary caregivers. So we wanted to try to make that one of our goals and help our members to achieve that. So my training point, make sure that your goals you establish are in keeping with the purpose of the organization. We were very fortunate that the women from the New Jersey Women in Law Enforcement were kind enough to share with us their bylaws for the organization, because any organization like that, you have to create bylaws. So we took what they had and we tweaked them a little bit, and that became our bylaws. We contacted a law firm with expertise in the area, and they helped us to create a certificate of incorporation. We became a not-for-profit organization. There's different types that you can do. We felt that best served our needs. So my other point from that is do research to identify any steps that you need to take to meet legal requirements for the organization. We're tax exempt because we are of the type of organization that we set up. We then discussed the best ways to launch this organization and knew it would be important to get as many females together as possible so people would know what we were planning to do. Fortunately, through my connections with the National Center for Women in Policing and Margie Moore, who was the president at that time, I was able to get her support in having the National Center for Women in Law Enforcement be in Saratoga, New York in 2009, when we wanted to launch our organization. So we ended up having it, and we also made sure that we had both Superintendent Corbett and Commissioner O'Donnell involved in that conference to give their support. We also had a stroke of luck, really. Some of you are probably familiar with Mariska Hargitay, who's in Law and Order. And in 2004, she had formed the Joyful Heart Foundation, which was their goal was to transform society's response to sexual assault, domestic violence, child abuse, and also support people in the field. Our partners in Division for Criminal Justice Services had a partnership with them and spoke to them about our conference that we were going to do, where we wanted to launch the idea of New York Women in Law Enforcement. So Mariska Hargitay did an opening video for the conference, and they also provided a speaker for us. And that really gave us a little momentum to get everything started. I'm happy to say at that first conference, there was 150 women and men who attended that conference, and we announced New York Women in Law Enforcement, and we signed up over 80 people to be the first members of the organization during that conference. So I think about discuss ways to make a big splash when you're announcing the organization, because you want as many people to know about it as possible and to become part of it. After that, we held our first official board of directors meeting. We elected our board of officers. In May of 1910, we saw the rollout of our website and our first New York Women in Law Enforcement conference in Cooperstown, New York. We had 120 women and men in attendance. And again, we do certainly support men joining the organization, and we have several who do, although predominantly it's women. And since then, we have been able to have, well, as I say, we had to skip 2020 and 2021 conferences because of COVID. But in 2022, last October, we had our biggest conference ever. We had over 250 people in attendance with Mo presenting. And we actually, at that conference, were able to foster a discussion with Mo's help about how New York State, which is now a partner of 30 by 30, because our governor has had many of us join, including the state police and other organizations, how we can be successful in trying to attract and improve more women into the law enforcement field. So we're submitting a report to Governor Hochul, Kathy Hochul, based on Mo's presentation and the results of our discussion. And we're hoping to see the governor move forward with some initiatives that we've suggested. So that's pretty much it in the nutshell. I hope I stayed within my time limit, and I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have about the organization.
Thank you so much, Colonel Campbell. We asked that we hold questions to the end of the presentations, but I was really happy to hear that you based a lot of your work on the National Center on Women in Policing, because we did also. They did phenomenal work and research to get started in their projects. So next, I am going to turn it over to the police women of Mesa, Arizona.
Can you guys hear us okay?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks, Colonel Campbell. That was great info. I liked what you said about, you need to go to people that have the autonomy to make things happen. And I don't know about you, Grit, but Mariska Hargitay is definitely at least a little bit of the reason why I'm a cop now. So anyways, I'm Officer Emily Nelson, and this is Detective Grit Catone, as you can tell by our lovely wallpaper with Mesa PD. With today's prompt being communities of practice, we wanted to talk a little bit about the things that our department has done to be successful with this initiative, or make the steps to be successful. One of the things that we did recently that was really important was the fifth annual Women's Leadership Symposium series, which Britt did a wonderful job with planning. It was a lunch that our sworn professionals and our professional staff. Oh, by the way, we're joined today by Minnie Salas and Tara Hall, who set us up. We're not going to turn the camera and show them, because who knows if we'll get it back. So, but anyways, this was a luncheon where our command staff, our sworn professionals, and our professional staff had the opportunity to come enjoy and get supported and get some good training. So Grit, tell us about it. You did a wonderful job.
So it was our fifth one. I participated, and I think I just have missed one, and I think I was out of town, but I feel like me personally, I got always something out of it. This fifth one, I was very fortunate that I was able to participate and be part of the planning from the very beginning till the end. Like Emily said, the difference on this series was that we did invite command staff and our male officers, and just made a point that it's open to everybody on our police department, and even our professional staff was always invited also. But we just wanted it to be known that this is not just for women. That makes, I think it's growing slow, every year it's getting better and better. I've been on for 15 years, Emily.
Been on for 2.
Yeah.
So, yeah, brand new.
So I think it's important that, that our young female officers, or even our young male officers, that our males that do support our females, but just to get it introduced to them and just have them, recognize that just building these relationships are very important, working relationships. And even you hear leadership and thinking, I just started just now their career. It doesn't mean that they're ready to promote, but it's something that you're going to take with you and have an understanding on how your department is, where you just get that knowledge, and you can carry that, and you can carry it with your peers and share that information with your peers.
Exactly.
One thing that I did want to point out, we did have over 100 participants, but we even shared it and opened it up to other agencies, our sister agencies, to, a lot of us, in the academy, we have other agencies,
Yes.
and, that we have already sisters and brothers, like relationships already built, and to continue our sister agencies
Yeah.
to be part of that also.
Talk about your highlighted guests.
I do want to point out one thing that did stand out for me personally. Also, I think Emily too.
Yes.
She, our panel was full of amazing,
The wonderful ladies of LAWPOA.
amazing women. Yes, from LA, Lieutenant Rodriguez, Lieutenant Apolito, Commander Flores,
Flores.
and Assistant Chief Integrities. They were just them being there and presenting the information that they provided as far as preparing for any interviews that are coming up, or just the preparation part.
Yeah,
But a big shout out to them. I know
Yeah.
you want to add a little bit as far
that
as-
part, I mean, for me, this was the first event I had the opportunity to attend, and, leadership symposium. Well, I had no idea what that meant. I knew there was gonna be lunch, which was great, but I walked away with so much more. The panel with LAWPOA was incredible. They literally sat us all down and walked us through how to ace the sergeant's exam. And not all of us aspire to be sergeants, but that same information on doing well in an oral board setting can be used for whatever aspirations that our younger or seasoned officers have. I mean, I have classmates that want to go to street crimes. I'm not going to street crimes, but but anyways, and what was important was that training was tailored to women. Assistant Chief Tingarides literally said something to the effect of, like, you need to walk into that interview like you are Beyonce. And she's, she spoke our language. LT Rodriguez, she said a lot of things that a lot of us needed to hear. When it's time for an oral board, it's not the time to talk about, well, we did this. No, I did this. I was successful in doing this. And I think another thing that she said that really spoke to me, and that a lot of younger ladies need to hear, is you walk into that room with the perfect score. And it's your job to keep it and show what you got. So, yeah, it was just a great environment to get that training that was specifically for women. I'll use it to help my peers, male and female. One of the challenges with things like this is, of course, getting your peers to come along and understand the importance. And sometimes that takes some arm twisting. But at the end of the day, I did sit through that great training. I have the presentation, and when it's time for the ladies that I went to the academy with to test for sergeant or test for street crimes or whatever they do want to do, I have that training to help them and do that mock oral board and all that good stuff. Aside from the training, it was just a really great environment for creating, that support and mentorship. I had a great opportunity to talk to Commander Daravan, who I've looked up to since she taught us in the academy. So it was a great
Yeah,
bunch.
we had strong women leadership for sure. We had Assistant Chief Gina Nesbitt also there. And then we had our city council
And
members there
our male
for sure, and
staff.
staff for
Yeah.
sure. Just seeing that support, I think, made a big difference. And I did want to bring something up also, the importance of building those relationships, even though that they're not in their department, you're making building those relationships with other outside agencies. Lieutenant Rodriguez and Lieutenant Apolito, kudos to you. They made extra time outside of this symposium to kind of give me guidance and critique me as far as to prepare me for the sergeant testing. So I told them when I first met them, they asked me straightforward, like, what's your plans? Like, what do you, and I explained to them, well, I only have 15, I already have almost 15 years. I'm probably going to just finish out my career at 20 and just leave. And that's when they were my inspiration as to move forward and promote. And they made a big impact and big influence, just their, command presence.
Yeah. And it's important for each agency to have those department sponsored events to inspire all of our female staff, sworn and professional, regardless of how much time they have on. I think about 30 by 30 and creating that community of practice, and how women can, and I only say this because when I was in the academy, there were a lot of young boys. So we had 20, 21, 22-year-old guys. I was the youngest female and I was 24. And if I had a presentation or some sort of initiative where I saw a young female officer doing what I had always hoped to do, I probably wouldn't have waited so long to get into this career. And I think these department-sponsored events do the same thing. For us younger officers that maybe have never even thought about promoting, seeing female command staff and ladies that walk the walk and talk the talk, and them showing us how they were successful just creates that ability for us to go further. And regardless of like you're on 15 years and you're getting it done. So it's awesome.
Yeah, I think, and it's important that, that we continue these symposiums just
Yes.
because the more we bring it out and introduce it, eventually we'll get somebody, we'll catch somebody's eye. But we have another one coming up in a few months. So, we pretty much hold it's like 2 a year. Yeah, approximately. And if we have time, we'll throw a third one in there. But I think just it is important that we do introduce them and expose them to our department.
In our department, not only do we have those sponsored events for those of us that are already with Mesa PD, but we do stuff to connect with the community, especially those young ladies that this might be a career that they're interested in doing. I had the pleasure of attending the Aspire Academy. I think that a couple of agencies have been hosting that event. For those of you that don't know, it's a whole weekend for young ladies, high school age ladies to do, firefighting and police activities all weekend and seeing those lady cops, those lady firefighters that look like them, act like them, and are successful in their careers. And if I had something like that, I can't tell that.
Yeah, we have good feedback on that. That
Yeah.
actually
That was incredible.
that was introduced to us from Tucson, and we brought it on and with Mesa Fire and Mesa PD, and I don't even know how many years we've had it here. It's been a few years, but it's been a great outcome. And like I said, it's just mentoring when they're young, starting them young.
And one of the hurdles to getting involved with these types of things can be, combated at the command staff level. Because the issue is, there's calls on the board. We're all in a recruiting crisis, and it's tough to send us to a bunch of trainings. But I feel like at Mesa, our command staff and our sergeants and lieutenants, they understand the value of 30 by 30 and the value of connecting with the community and these types of events. So I can't think of a time where I went to my sergeant like, hey, I really want to go do the Aspire Academy this week. Is it okay if I, take a patrol spot off the street? It's never been, like, oh, there's no guilt to it. It's like, yeah, go build yourself, make things better and make things happen. So, but that starts at the higher levels, which our department has done a really good job with. So
I agree. Just having that support.
Yeah.
Minnie, Tara, is there anything you guys want to add?
No.
But I think we just wanted to express I feel like we've had a great outcome with having these the women leadership symposiums. We're going to continue them. We have the support to continue them. So eventually hopefully we'll get those females, because a lot of the younger generation, but the younger officers, they're so focused on just going to work, getting their mandatory training and not setting goals and find out what their purpose is and getting to, setting those goals ahead of time. But that's our feedback on that. I'm not sure if you guys have any questions as far as what's worked for us and what hasn't. Feel free to reach out.
thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I loved hearing on what you learned from LAWPOA, because specifically this webinar is about creating that community of practice and seeing how that information is shared. And luckily enough, we do have the Commander Ruby Flores, who is the president of LAWPOA here, and she will be our next panelist.
Excellent. Thank you. Perfect segue there. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon to my sisters in Mesa PD. Gosh, What a great, thank you. We've really established such a great relationship, and it just started with simple conversation and reaching out to see how we can work together. And that trip, speaking at your luncheon was so rewarding. And that's what really filled our soul. We all came away from there thinking, wow, we really did make an impact. And then to see Grit finally decide to talk, to take that test really made us so happy and so proud. We put together some mock oral interviews for her, along with another woman that we met there that was going for assistant chief and then another agency. So that was really, really gratifying. And I think what 30 by 30 and what our women organizations should be doing. So with that, I do have a few slides. I just want to be cognizant of my time. Nicole, do I have about 5 minutes or so?
Oh, no, you're good. Yeah, you have until 4 o'clock, so about 12 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let me see if I can share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen? Thumbs up, yes, okay, excellent. All right, there we go. So in light of today's topic and looking at best practices and 30 by 30, I have to really start with 30 by 30 has really elevated the status of women, not only in our organization, but the LAPD. And I'll explain to you why. So really, I chose our theme for today is women who support women are more successful. There are study after studies that show that women that network, that work together, that support one another. They talk about the power of the pack. And I tell you, that is so, so true, because it is contagious, but also we do have to continually dispel the stereotype that women don't support one another. And sadly, that is kind of the competitive nature of where we're at, because oftentimes women are competing for a sole position within the department, or a sole position within a unit or specialized section. So we really need to get past that, work together, because there's room for all of us at the top, as long as we continue to work hard and elevate one another, so that we do have equal representation at all ranks. And that's what 30 by 30 has helped us do, is identify where we have gaps within the organization. So this is our board. We just had our annual election, so everyone was re-elected. So I think our membership is really happy with who we have. But I think it's, Chief Moore brought this to my attention, and he said, you really have a strong board in terms of leadership and diversity, which really benefits our members. So we have, Lieutenant Julie Rodriguez. She is a detective assistant commanding officer at one of our patrol divisions. Chief Tingridi, she is over our Community Safety Partnership Bureau. Lieutenant Alicia Jordan, she's over our Force Investigation Division. Amira Ippolito, at the time when she was elected, she was over Training Division. Now she just landed an exceptional position in our Gang and Narcotics Division. Lieutenant Erin Burns Johnson, she was a lieutenant in patrol as a watch commander, and now is working our recruitment section. And Detective Erica Kirk, she was a detective in operations at the time of the elections, and now she is serving our officer representation section. So I think we touch a lot of different areas within the department in terms of specialization and expertise, so that we can help our members. We also have civilian board members as well. Again, the power of the pack. So, Alice Stebbin Wells was ahead of her time back in 1925 when she decided to really take the charge and have the courage to establish our women's organization. Love this picture here, where our women were in skirts. We had to work patrol in skirts, high heels, hosiery and everything. I don't think I would survive having to work a foot beat for many hours wearing heels. So thankfully, in 1925, Alice Stebbin Wells really paved the way for many of us today. Here we are, the women. I like to look at these pictures, and oftentimes when we speak internally to our own women and through seminars and trainings, we need to reflect on our past, I think, because as well as the men, because we know that we want our men to be allies and advocates for us. But if they don't clearly understand the barriers that women have had to overcome over the years, I believe, I don't think they appreciate us as much and give us equal status. The reason the women are in the department, and why women can now promote past the rank of sergeant, is because we had to force our way in it. We had to create lawsuits. Women were only allowed to investigate crimes involving women or family. They were matrons, and now we can hold every position within every rank of our department. So that is something to be said for. So since 30 by 30, since we've been talking about it and establishing more clear goals and what we want to do, we have enhanced our membership. We're now over 600 members. Before 30 by 40, we were hovering probably more around, we're fluctuating around 400, 500 membership members. Now we're over 600. 25% of our membership are our administrative professional staff, and 13% of our membership are men. So we really are advocating and opening the doors to men, and it's really been really gratifying to see that our men are supporting us and wanting to learn better how to better work with us, value us, and be our advocates when we're not in the room. Speaking of being in the room when decisions are made, we look at our number of our command staff that are women. So we look good overall in our whole department. We are about 18.6%, and also 18.6% in command staff, which sounds wonderful. It's great, but we've hovered at those numbers for years. So that's where we need to figure out how we're going to move the needle. Our probationary police officers, our officers that we're hiring coming in to the field, are 27% women. So 27% women, but yet we're only still 18% on command staff. The majority of the women after patrol, many of them go to detective ranks. So which is very interesting to me as well, is if we want to continue to create this pipeline to have women in leadership positions, how do we create their career paths so that they are ready to assume those leadership roles? Detective is good, but we still are lagging behind at the ranks of sergeant and lieutenant, where some of those numbers are 16%. Lieutenants, we have 20% women. And again, our highest numbers are in detectives with 27%. So 18%, if you look at our command staff, is great, but I'd like to drill down when we have just one female deputy chief out of 11. That's not very good. We have 3. I'm one of the 3 female commanding officers at the rank of commander, where there are 16 men, and so forth. So we just had a new promotional exam for the rank of commander. And then recently another one. We have our captain's exam coming up in April. So LAWPOA, along with all the other affinity groups this year, we have really been intentional about holding regular promotional seminars so that we can help them achieve those ranks. So some of the initiatives that we've been working on, really thankfully, thanks to the initiative, is, well, the Blake Justice Consent Decree. That's always been something that we have we're past it, but we're still using this as a best practice so that we collect the data, we collect the numbers of where our women are within each department, each section, each unit. So this is just a visual of some of the positions where our women are. Jen Grosso, she was our very first SWAT officer And she since promoted, she made lieutenant, she's in the field now. And it wasn't up until a few months ago that we were able to bring in our second female to SWAT. It's newsworthy, it's great, she's a good friend of mine, I'm super proud of her. But again, the conversation is one in each unit is not enough. And representation matters. So we want to continue to look at that and have more women in specialized divisions, and frankly, be able to reach those leadership ranks. So a lot of what we do is the intentional visibility of women through our social media, through our website, through our internal messaging. We always try to have representation of women in everything that we do. Qualified women. That's another thing too, is when we started 30 by 30 and LAWPOA was becoming more of a topic where people are within the organization are asking what it's about, what are we doing, why, you know, people begin to start that conversation of like, oh my God, we're lowering the standards. So I think a lot of it too is that in the consistent messaging of showing qualified women doing what we do best and continuing to elevate them, the inclusion in every meeting, every seminar, every assignment, every, you know, patrol operation, have women that are not only just there visible in the room, but those that have an opportunity to speak, to present. You know, it's one thing that we talk about, you know, succession planning with our leaders. It's not always about you as the captain to be the one in front of the camera at a news conference or at a meeting. Invite women and invite them to speak and support what they're saying. Another great initiative that I'm very proud of that we were able to do, LAWPOA, and in my role as the diversity, equity, and inclusion officer, we're able to memorialize one of our first deputy chiefs, first female deputy chief, Margaret Peggy York. Last year, she passed away. So there was a council motion and support from internally through our the chief of police and also the mayor and city council. And it was decided that we would rename one of our police stations. So for those of you who may or may not know, Peggy York was she was a phenomenal woman. I got to know her personally. She was a mentor and a friend. Her husband, Judge Lancito, is very well known, but Peggy was the inspiration for the Cagney and Lacey show. At the time, she was working Northeast Police Station as brand new detective. At that time, nobody wanted to work with her. So the lieutenant called her in and said, hey, I'm going to stick you with another female because nobody wants to work with you. And that's how blunt and frank they were with her. And so she says, all right. So she teamed up with her partner and they were a phenomenal team. They were the first of course, all female homicide team, two women, but they ended up having like the highest clearance rate. They were able to get all kinds of different homicides cleared through confessions or arrest. They were exceptional in what they did. And it wasn't until then that people began to see value in what women can do. And hence that the show was born. So that was out of her inspiration. So that was something I think that will forever remain in our department's history and show that how effective women were or are. There's the list. I'm sure you've been reading it as I've been talking, but some of the initiatives we've been working on together in terms of workplace equity. We audited our lactation rooms, found that many of them are not up to par. So then we started looking at how we can improve that. And we're looking at different grants so we can get some funding so that we can look into the lactation pods that I learned about that Mesa PD has within their department. And so we have learned that we have grown out of our spaces, and we learned that some lactation rooms were storage room / lactation room, a interview / lactation room. So there wasn't a dedicated space and no one was owning it. And some areas were taking care of the spaces. And usually it's the women that are lactating that are using the room that are taking care of it. But now it's become the responsibility of the command. We have 22 police stations within our city. So it certainly, there is a need to create something nicer, cleaner, that's within our city guidelines, but also have an option by bringing in the lactation pods. So I'm hoping that comes to fruition. Another thing that we did this year was we offer a lead-free ammunition option. So when we qualify, because our officers have to qualify every other month, and some women that are lactating or they have medical exemptions are not able to qualify because of the lead. But this year the chief was agreeable to offering a lead-free ammunition option. The lead is that ammunition is a little bit pricier than our standard ammunition, but I think, and the chief agreed that it was certainly a good investment and shows intentional support for our women. Maternity closet. So that's another great initiative that I'm really super proud of, is that we offer free alterations, free maternity uniforms to our women during pregnancy, but also most importantly, post-pregnancy. Because as you know, I'm a mother of two, so I know that my uniforms don't quite fit the same after having a kid, after having two kids again. And, we fluctuate in size and shape. So we're able to help our women out in that regard. And because we do have men in our organization, we do offer the same for them, not maternity uniforms, but uniforms, because we learned after COVID, and we had to get back in our uniforms during the civil unrest and when we were mobilized. Some detectives and other people that don't normally wear a uniform every day found that maybe they needed to get a new uniform or different size. So we were able to accommodate our membership in that manner. One thing too that we advocated for and supported is the establishment of a department women's coordinator. The chief wanted this person to be a person of command staff rank so that they have influence and the autonomy to move about the department to ensure that all the needs unique to women are being addressed. Anything from workplace issues to health and wellness to our, leave of absence, but also when it comes to promotional advancement. So that's something that I'm working on with our department coordinator and our affinity groups, is looking at ways in which we can further prepare our women, but also look at any practices that may inherently be barriers for women for promotion. Through LAWPOA, through our members, we do offer scholarship awards, training opportunities internally and externally, as we did with Mesa PD. And additionally, we do have two of our women that are part of the NYWLE Fellowship Program through the 30 by 30. And I meet with these two women periodically. It sounds like they're really enjoying the fellowship and are very appreciative and are really happy that they're a part of it. I think the one thing too that I think is really impressive is that they get that lifetime mentorship and training opportunities through that fellowship program. So I thank you for that. Women's History Panel. So that's another project that we took on to start educating and sharing what our history of women has been within the department. And then also identifying where some of the gaps are, where we only have one woman in SWAT. We have a handful in our Metropolitan Division. This year, we also had another milestone achieved where there was a commanding officer that she was the first woman to hold that position in our Force Investigation Division. So we do have some divisions where we do have some gaps, and that's I think the beauty of 30 by 30 is the accountability piece in which we report back and talk about how we can get women in some of those other positions. I did want to bring up to your attention, draw your attention to one photograph. It's super special. And I think it's going to be your top right-hand corner. There's a panel. I'm standing there with the woman in pink. So she is the woman that's photographed behind in that panel. Her name is Joyce Cano. She was the first LAPD AAPI officer to join the department. She's still living. And it was such a pleasure to meet her. And for her, it meant so much for her to see how far we've come in our department and how women have advanced and held new positions that like never before. Because when she joined, she was one of those that was hired as a matron and had to wear a skirt and high heels. And then she further progressed through the department. So it was kind of nice to be able to meet her, speak to her, and introduce her to our women within the department. So lastly, I will close with an invite to our symposium. It's an annual symposium that we put together. It's going to be March 9th in the city of Burbank. So it's just a few miles outside the city of LA. You can scan the QR code if you're interested. You can go to our website to check it out. We're really proud of the work that we do. This is probably our biggest event that we do all year. The good thing about it is that since we are a nonprofit, we really don't do a lot of fundraising, but our police foundation helps fund it, as well as our revolving training fund. So our department's training fund does dedicate a budget line item so that they dedicate money for this because it's training. We do get California Post credit for it. And otherwise there would be really, it'd be impossible to put this together with, we anticipate about 700 or more attendees. So we look forward to seeing you if you decide to come. So with that, I can close. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Commander Flores, and I will be borrowing the power of the pack. I love that. I
Great.
believe, Nicole, you said we had one question from our audience.
Yes, just one question from the chat. Who tracks the data for your respective departments? So each of the agencies could just quickly let us know.
So I'll start with LAPD. We have a 30 by 30 coordinator at the rank of a commander, Commander Steve Lurie. And one of his, he comes out of his office, one of his staff members tracks it.
Are you there? As far as Mesa, we have a database that we actually go through our HR and they can just run a report for us.
And that's typically done by Tara Hall, who's
Yeah.
a professional staff member who is at the level of commander as well.
Okay. And so I have a question. I realize that in Mesa, you said that your meetings are open to whoever wants to attend, and that's great. And Commander Flores, you said you have 13% representation of men in your organization. I really think that that is special, because a lot of times there's this messaging where there's like a zero-sum game, right? If you bring on more women, someone's losing. And in actuality, 30 by 30, we say if you get right about the knowledge, skills, and abilities of a good officer, that naturally will increase the representation of women in policing. So what type of messaging do you do so that there isn't this counter message of that this may be viewed negatively?
So it starts with our chief of police, and whenever he speaks or refers to women, he always says qualified women. When it comes to, first when we launched 30 by 30, some of the messaging was that we're only hiring women and we're scraping the barrel, so to speak. We're trying to just hire any woman that walks in the door. So it can be challenging, but I think it's just been consistent messaging and the intentional visibility of women, and having us is kind of being the voice behind it, but really the support of the chief of police. So one thing too, internally, if you are studying for promotional exam or advanced pay grade, there are mandatory questions about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to include the topic of inclusion, increase in representation of women. So in essence, it kind of forced people to learn it and understand what is this 30 by 30. And that generated the conversation. I speak at our supervisor school. I talk to our brand new police recruits that come in the door. and through our command development school. And part of that message is why women are so valuable to the organization. But I have to credit 30 by 30. You all did the research, you did the work. And so, because people are driven by evidence-based data. So that's why I'm constantly looking at data and numbers and stats about the power of the pack and how effective we are in the workplace. So it's constantly kind of regurgitating some of those messaging points every time we have an opportunity to put out a message, which is monthly by the chief. So there's always an opportunity for him to continue to push forward for us as well.
Thank you. And I see one message that just came in the chat group for Mesa. Are you targeting female sororities or visiting colleges that specialize in criminal justice when you're recruiting?
Sorry.
So we are, we have a great recruiting team, and we make sure, one of the big things that we do is we try to feature women on social media. So potential applicants and that kind of thing they do see women doing the job. We do, our TikTok is goofy. We got lots of ladies on there, but yes, we do visit colleges and try to get our recruiting done that way. I'm so sorry. I do want to go back to that last question just because I really liked it. Especially being a younger officer and hearing all my buddies and what they have to think about, and they let me have it. There's no sugarcoating, but yeah, it's a tough topic. Like, how are we benefiting from this initiative? And are we, I love what Commander Flores said, is it qualified women? And it is. And one thing that our department does that I'm so grateful for, and it gives me a sense of pride, is there is no portion of the academy training or the field training that is altered or changed in any way for any sort of demographic. Male, female, doesn't matter. All the requirements are the same. There was no part of training that I had to perform less than my male coworkers in order to wear the badge. So we give our ladies, there's no doubts that you earned your position with our department. So
Yeah, I agree with that. We are one of the best, we have one of the best training in the area, that we have our sister agencies coming to our training
Yes.
because of how well we do. So. But
So, yeah.
What was the other question?
What do we
Oh,
do
yeah,
on that?
yeah, thank you. Exposing to just the younger generation, as far as like we're starting already at the Spire Academy, where these girls are going from 13 to, 17 years of age, and they're going into, obviously some of them are going to college and stuff. And we do have our intern programs also that we bring them in, and they're volunteers. And they have to get those credits anyways, but we introduce them and explain the process as far as what they need to do to get themselves into the academy.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a fantastic panel. I see Colonel Campbell.
If I could just add just one thing,
Sure.
2 seconds. One of the things I just wanted to say is you're so lucky in California. You have a lot of larger agencies with a lot of women in them, which is great. With the exception of NYPD and probably the New York State Police, most of our agencies in New York are small. And so there may not be more than 1 or 2 women in the agency. So one of the reasons that we did form this statewide organization, and why I think it's been successful, it enables these women that never work with other women to be networking with other women and to help each other. And that's what I think our members like the most about that sort of an organization.
So, thank you to everyone who participated. We had a great turnout today. I especially want to thank our panelists, Colonel Campbell, Commander Flores, and Officer Nelson and Detective Catone.